The possibility of a US ground operation against Karg Island in the Persian Gulf has just gained momentum. The Donald Trump administration is considering occupying or blockading the island to pressure Iran into fully reopening the Strait of Hormuz. As of this Thursday, March 26, 2026, there was no official invasion order confirmed, but the military movements and the tone from Washington have put the region on high alert. Between March 13 and 20, the United States sent two major amphibious forces to the Middle East. Then, the USS Boxer, the USS Comstock, the USS Portland. In practice, this sends two rapid response units toward the Gulf, with about 5,000 Marines and thousands of sailors ready to act if they receive the order. The reinforcements are not limited to the sea. The Associated Press reported that at least 1,000 soldiers are also being prepared to head to the Middle East. This matters because it shows a clear change in scale. The scenario is no longer just naval, and now, in a concrete way, there is a ground option on the horizon. Karg Island has become the center of this crisis because it is not just any island. It is located about 26 kilometers from the Iranian coast and serves as the main outlet for the country's oil exports. According to Reuters, Karg accounts for about 90% of Iran's oil exports. Even after the American attacks on March 14th against military targets on the island, oil exports continued to flow. That's where the heart of the problem lies. When Washington looks at Karg, it doesn't just see a military target, it sees the Iranian regime's main source of revenue. A large part of the oil that leaves there goes to China, and any major disruption in Karg affects not only Tehran, but the entire international market. Reuters itself pointed out that heavy damage to the island's infrastructure could remove up to about 2 million barrels per day from the global market. The reason for this pressure is straightforward. Karg has become leveraged to try to force Iran to loosen its grip on the Strait of Hormuz. Does the maritime corridor carry about 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas? When traffic comes to a halt, the shock isn't limited to the Middle East. It hits energy prices, shipping costs, fertilizer prices, and food prices, and affects countries far away from the war. In the current debate, two main paths emerge. The first is a naval blockade around Karg to stop Iranian exports without a long occupation on the island. The second is a ground operation, with Marines landing to take and hold the island. Both scenarios are serious. The blockade alone would be a hard economic blow. The occupation would be an even more explosive step because it would put American troops very close to Iranian territory and open up a new level of confrontation. Tehran has already responded to this threat. On March 23, Iran's Defense Council stated that any attack against it or its coasts would lead to the mining of Gulf routes. In other words, if Karg is attacked or occupied, Iran promises to escalate the chaos at sea. This shows how an action taken to open Hormuz could also, at first, further inflame the region. Washington's political message also remains contradictory. Trump said he's not putting troops anywhere, but then he stated that if he were, he wouldn't say so. At the same time, the White House talks about negotiations and the possibility of an agreement, while Iran denies direct talks and maintains a confrontational stance. In other words, there are troops on the move, there is diplomatic pressure, but there is still no final public decision. What is happening, therefore, is simple to understand. The United States is rapidly reinforcing its military presence and considering targeting the most sensitive point of the Iranian economy. At the center of this are Trump, the Pentagon, the Marines sent from the Pacific, and the Tehran regime. This could escalate in the coming days because the movements already started between March 13 and 20. The decisive point at this moment is that the world has not yet seen a confirmed invasion, but it is already seeing real signs of preparation for a much bigger clash.